backcountry.church, we are talking about the nature of God, and you really cannot talk about the nature of God without talking about the sovereignty of God. The sovereignty of God. So I thought we'd just take a few moments and clarify it. I'm just kidding. We'll just give a quick overview of what the sovereignty of God is about and some passages and some problems with it. Well, the sovereignty of God is the argument or belief that God's absolute control, authority, and rule over all aspects of creation. And that includes you, and that includes me. It emphasizes God's supreme power, authority, and governance over the universe, and over events, and over the affairs of humanity. This doctrine is really central to the Christian faith, that God is 100% completely sovereign. So some scriptures that you may want to check out include Isaiah 46, 9 and 10. Remember the former things, those long ago. I am God, there is no other. I am God, there is none like me. I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times, which is still to come. And I say, my purpose will stand, and I will do all that I please. That's pretty, straight up. God is in control. A couple other ones. Proverbs 16:9, the heart of man plans his ways, but the Lord establishes steps. And then Daniel 4:35, Daniel 4:35, you can look that one up. But there's sovereignty and there's free will. When you think about this from the New Testament point of view, it's Romans 9, 10, and 11. Romans 9 talks about 9 and 11 talk about the sovereignty of God, and Romans 10 talks about the free will of man. They are sandwiched together, and you got to talk about them together. Well, the hard thing to understand about the sovereignty of God is, what about the problem of evil? The understanding how God's sovereignty coexists with the existence of evil and suffering in the world really is quite challenging. Is God really in control if you have all this suffering? And what about suffering of believers and stuff? Well, then you also have human responsibility and free will. The tension between God's sovereignty. Is he sovereign, or do people have free will? And we'll talk about free will when it comes later in this series on Kaleidoscope. And then there's that tension that sits between the sovereignty of God and for us to understand free will of man. And finally, divine election. The concept of God choosing certain individuals for salvation as emphasis. Well, does that mean he didn't choose others or chose not to choose others? Well, let me just give you 3 real positive assurances or good things about the sovereignty of God. First of all, believers find comfort. You and I find comfort in security and assurance. If God is sovereign, then we can rest and trust in him. Order and purpose. We look at earth, as I've mentioned before, we look at human events as with a carpet and the tapestry, and on the backside is all the knots and ugliness, but on the front side it's beautiful. We just see the backside of the tapestry, that God is actually working out his divine plan in the midst of all the chaos and suffering. And finally, something that we can hang our hat on is divine guidance and providence. Recognizing that God's sovereignty encourages us to trust in his guidance and providence. Understanding that God is actively involved in directing the course of not only human history, but your life and my life. You can lean into God. You can 100% absolutely trust him.
First you gotta get the permit, and then you gotta buy the land.
And they're like intricate, huge playgrounds.